I'm still paranoid about the audio based on that thing a couple of weeks ago, so I apologize about that, guys. Today, as advertised, we are going to pick this up at Chapter 1.5 in Airspace. Airspace. From your reading, what is airspace? Now go ahead. Airspace. We can't just run around there and just fly all willy-nilly around the country, now can we? So, of course, we have to have some form of regulated movement in various types of airspace. Airspace like this, you have regulatory, you have non-regulatory, and from those you have controlled and uncontrolled special use airspaces that you have and other types of airspace. And so it really depends on the amount of aircraft that you have moving into a particular area. The more places that you see more airplanes, the more controlled that airspace is going to be. And then if you're out in the middle of the ocean, or if you're in the desert or someplace like that, there are not going to be as many airspace issues, or so you would think. But there will be. So what we're going to do in this chapter here is that we're going to talk about airspace. I will tell you the things that I want you to know. And remember, when I tell you about the things that I want you to know, those will probably show up on a quiz near you. So, with that, let's get crack-a-lackin'. Airspace, as we look at this, as I told you here before, this is kind of what airspace is. When we look at this, we're going to come back to this illustration, but what I want to show you here is the illustration are most of the airspace things that we're going to be talking about here. And from this, we'll be talking about here Class Alpha airspace, Class Bravo, Charlie, Delta, which is Aspen, Echo, and then Golf. Okay? So, and then we'll be talking about those different things. So what you're seeing here now is that you have airspace governed from flight level 600 or 60,000 feet MSL, but actually that's still not true because you still have controlled airspace above this, because above 60,000 feet it goes back to Class Echo airspace. So you've got all different types of airspace. Anytime that you're flying, you're in some form of airspace. And if you're flying around, it's going to be good for you to know what kind of airspace you're flying around in. So, as I say, we're going to come back to that. So when we look at controlled airspace, this is that thing where we talk about air traffic control, kind of governing that. And so with controlled airspace, this is something that you're going to want to know. This part right here, controlled airspace, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo. Okay? You're going to need to know those airspaces. You're not going to need to necessarily know all of the operating limitations within those airspaces, but I want you to know, if I ask you, give me examples of controlled airspace, this is what I expect you to tell me. So when we look at this, Class Alpha airspace, that is that airspace that is going to be for IFR traffic. That airspace is going to be here from 18,000 feet MSL up to and including 60,000 feet, or flight level 600. Remember, we start referring to flight levels when we get to 18,000 feet. So flight level 180 is 18,000 feet. We do not say flight level 170 because that's below 18,000 feet. We would just say 17,000 feet. So that class airspace is there. And so the things that I want you to remember about the class airspace is from 18,000 feet up to and including 60,000 feet, okay? And it also includes the airspace overlying the waters within 12 nautical miles of the coast of the 48 contiguous states and Alaska. In order for you to fly in Class Alpha airspace, you must be on an IFR flight plan. And what that means is that you have to be an instrument-rated pilot in an aircraft that is instrument certified on an instrument flight plan. You can't just say, okay, I'm up here flying around VFR, now I'm going to fly IFR. Doesn't quite work like that. You have to have a flight plan and you have to get permission in order for that to happen. So that's the big things about Class Alpha airspace. 18,000 feet to 60,000 feet, and you've got to be on an IFR flight plan to be up there, okay? So now, Class Bravo. So Class Bravo, I want you to think big. Class Bravo airspace is going to be that airspace around big airports that are also busy, okay? Big and busy. So when we look at Class Bravo airspace, you're going to see this kind of airspace around Denver, Dallas-Fort Worth, Los Angeles, large airports. Albuquerque is not Class Bravo airspace, so it's going to be smaller. More on that later. So when we look at this, Class Bravo airspace generally goes from the surface to 10,000 feet MSL around the nation's busiest airports. Now, that is in general, because some of the airports that I'm going to show you are definitely different than 10,000 feet MSL. So it varies, I'll put it that way, okay? Now then, oh, by the way, Class Bravo, remember, busy, big, and surface to 10,000 feet MSL, by and large. Class Charlie. Class Charlie is going to be a little smaller. So this is going to be more for like your regional airports. Albuquerque is Class Charlie airspace. Colorado Springs is Class Charlie airspace. So with this, Class Charlie airspace, from the surface to 4,000 feet above the airport elevation, in other words, 4,000 feet AGL in most cases. Again, that varies. It's going to be kind of a two-layered type of a thing, and we'll look at that here in just a little bit. But you're going to have something from the surface to 4,000 feet, but then you could also have a shelf that is going to be on that outer circle there, up to 10 nautical miles, the radius there from that airport, from about 1,200 feet to 4,000 feet AGL. And so it's like an upside down wedding cake is kind of what that looks like, okay? So that's Class Charlie, and that's like Albuquerque, Colorado Springs, are two of the ones that I'm just thinking of here for that. Class Delta, let's look at that. So in Class Delta airspace, again, controlled airspace, and this is Aspen. So KASE is an example of Class Delta airspace. Class Delta airspace is smaller than Class Charlie. Class Delta airspace generally from the surface to about 2,500 feet above the airport elevation. That's 2,500 feet AGL, okay? So whatever that is, so for instance, if we're saying that that's 2,500 feet, then the ceiling of Class Delta airspace in Aspen would be approximately 10,500 feet MSL. That's kind of the way that it normally looks. And normally it is just that one cylinder, and it doesn't have multiple layers to it. It is just that one cylinder, normally about 5 nautical miles, or is it 5 or is it 4? We'll look at it here in just a little bit. So that's Class Delta airspace. So there's Aspen. Class Echo. So remember, in Class Bravo, we think of big and busy. Class Echo, we're going to be thinking about everywhere. Class Echo fills in a lot of space. And from 18,000 feet from 1,000, goodness, from 17,999 feet down to sea level, it is probably the largest of the airspaces. Now, clearly, Class Alpha is going to be the biggest below 60,000 feet. But if you think about Class Echo beginning again at 60,001 feet up to the rest of the atmosphere, then clearly Class Echo is going to be the largest group of molecules, I think, that we have. So that's Class Echo airspace. And you can fly VFR, you can fly IFR, it's the biggest. If it's not A, B, C, or D in the controlled airspace standpoint, then it's going to be Echo. So we look here, and we're going to talk about this here in a little bit when we see the picture again. And the thing that I want you guys to be aware of is that with Class Echo airspace, in most areas, the Class Echo airspace base is approximately 1,200 feet AGL. And then it can go up to 17,999 feet. There are going to be some areas where Class Echo doesn't begin at 1,200 feet AGL, but it can begin either at the surface or 700 feet AGL. And it depends on the coloration of the charts as to tell you kind of where that is. Class Echo airspace goes all the way up to 17,999 feet, but not 18,000 feet. Remember, at 18,000 feet, that's Alpha. 17,999 and below, other than Bravo, Charlie, and Delta airspace, in controlled airspace, it's Echo. Okay? So that's Echo. Now we have uncontrolled airspace. In uncontrolled airspace, the example that we have is Class Gulf airspace. When we look at Class Gulf airspace, I want you to think ground. Okay? Class Gulf airspace, I want you to think ground. And here's why. Anything that is not A, B, C, D, or E, it's going to be G. So if we look at that, we're going to have airspace that can be, in essence, if we go from the ground up to, in some places, 12, well, that's not a 2, 1,200 feet AGL. And we think about that as being 1,200 feet AGL, not necessarily 10,000 feet MSL, because in Colorado we have mountains, and those mountains, you know, can be over 14,000 feet tall. So that Class Gulf airspace can be an additional 1,200 feet above those mountains. And we'll look at that here in a little bit. Okay? So that's Class Gulf airspace. So be able to tell me what Class Gulf airspace is all about. Okay? Then we go to special use airspace. This is where we have some different areas here that we definitely want to be familiar with. Prohibited areas, restricted, warning, military operation areas, alert areas, and controlled firing areas. Now, when you hear me just say those words, you kind of think, okay, there's a lot of military work going on here. Controlled fire areas there, military operation areas like that. Yeah, we have a lot of that airspace, especially out in the West, that kind of let our men and women in uniform get out there and practice in those high-speed, high-performance aircraft in those military operation areas, controlled firing areas, as well as some of these alert, restricted, and prohibited areas. So we're going to talk about those here for just a little bit. So if we look at prohibited areas, these are going to be areas that most of them, for reasons of national security or the national welfare, you can't fly. So prohibited, no. Okay? You can't do it. So one of the quickest ways to get shot down is to fly over Camp David, to fly over the National Mall in DC or the White House. Okay? That's probably one of the quickest ways to get shot down in an airplane. Is by flying over one of those prohibited areas. So you'll be able to look on your maps and see where those prohibited areas are so you stay away from them. Also, when you get close to them, you're going to get real popular on the radio. So, and popular, not in a good way. So, restricted areas. Now, these are areas that can be hazardous, where there are operations going on there that you may not want to be there. And while they're not completely prohibited, they are subject to some pretty restrictive restrictions. Is that redundantly redundant? I think maybe it is. So when you look at these restricted areas, in some cases you may be able to, but the question is, should you? And that's the thing. You could, in some cases, fly through a restricted area, but I would be extremely cautious about even doing it. One of the things that can happen is that under IFR flight plans, you may be able to transit that airspace and be routed through those areas. But that would be the only time that I would feel comfortable going through any form of a restricted area at all. And ATC is going to know if that area is it hot? Are they doing work in there? Is there stuff going on in there that I could get in somebody's way, or get shot at or something? And so ATC is going to know that. And if they need to reroute you around that area after you've already been, let's say, given a flight plan that puts you through that airspace, then they'll let you know. Also, if I have a flight plan that shows my route through a restricted area, when I get closer to that, I am going to be talking to ATC and say, listen, by the way, just so you know, I'm paying attention here. I do see my routing going over this restricted area. Are we good? I'm going to ask. So just check. Okay? So here's the way that you can do it. So you can look at these areas here. So this first one that they're showing here in the P, remember that P? It's prohibited. Okay? That's going to be an area around Camp David, and that's just, guys, you just don't want any part of that. So that's going to be a prohibited area. Then you could also have restrictions or warning areas that you have. So the restricted with an R, okay? Now, warning areas. If we look at warning areas here, these are going to be areas that you'll see on a map that will have something like that. And those are going to be areas that they're similar to restricted areas, but the government doesn't have sole jurisdiction over that airspace there. So it's one of those things that you may have a warning area that it's going to be over domestic or perhaps international waters. And so again, it's not just completely the U.S. government that has the say-so on those warning areas. There can also be international interests there also that can have a say in that. So just keep in mind, it's one of those areas that in a warning area, they're not telling you you can't, but you need to really be on your game to know what rules apply to you if you are operating in those warning areas. So just be aware of that. MOAs, military operation areas. These are going to be areas here where you're going to have high speed, fast moving aircraft zipping along around there. Most of these aircraft are going to know you're there. And it's one of those things where they wouldn't necessarily do this on purpose, but I can tell you this. Flying in New Mexico, Texas, Utah, the desert Southwest, we have a lot of open spaces. And there are a ton of MOAs around a lot of these VFR corridors that we may have in airspace. So there's a lot of military activity going on there. I have been told that they do not intentionally target civil aircraft flying through those airspaces. However, I have heard anecdotal stories that if these guys are out there practicing and there's just some poor schmuck like me flying, transitioning across a military operation area, it would not be uncommon to have these guys come in and try some form of an intercept to you. They wouldn't actually intercept, and chances are you're not going to know that they're intercepting you, but they're out there playing, and they'll try to pick you up visually. They'll try to maneuver, but then of course they're going to break off before they do anything else. And so you're not going to hear anybody tell you that they will intentionally target any kind of civilian aircraft, because everybody would just have kittens if they heard about that. But they will kind of play with you a little bit. They're not gonna get anywhere close enough to you to cause a problem. But they know you're there. And here's the thing. If me flying across there and that helps one of our men and women out there flying around in one of those F-22s or doing what else, and I'm bait along the way there, as long as I don't get hit, they can use me. If that helps them get better at their job, God bless. So there's that. Alert areas. You'll see alert areas that are going to be on maps here. Here's an example of a restricted area down here on this area. So you're going to see alert areas. Do they have an example of an alert area? I'm not sure. I don't see that here. Let's see if there's an alert. There's a warning area. Well, it'll tell you. In these airspaces, you'll see these hashed blue lines like that, and then it'll tell you if it's like an alert area. That's going to be something that, again, ATC is going to know, and in some cases, it's going to be a lot of pilot training or a lot of activity. It's going to be busy, perhaps, so you're definitely going to want to know what's going on in those areas. Oh, by the way, MOAs. When we talk about the MOAs here, one of the things that you get in a flight briefing is that when you're creating your flight plan, ATC will know if those areas are scheduled to be hot or cold. And so they'll tell you, this is a hot MOA area, proceed at your own risk kind of a thing. Or they'll tell you that the area is cold. Well, you can have the ATC on your flight briefing say that it's cold. Well, they may decide at 9 a.m. as you're, as they're kind of getting up and getting around or whatever, to open it up and go play. So ATC kind of stays on top of that. And as you're starting to get closer to that airspace, it's always good to kind of confirm with ATC, are you still showing this MOA to be cold as you fly through it? And they'll give you the right information. Controlled firing areas, these are things where they're going to be launching projectiles downrange, and there are several of these in Colorado that I know of. I know of one of them just north of Canyon City, Colorado, there west of Pueblo, and they have these controlled firing areas that they have in there. And again, those are going to be times when they're not doing it all the time, and so they're going to be hot or cold. But when they are hot through there, that's not necessarily a place I think I'd like to be. So typically what they will do is that if they do see another aircraft, they'll have spotters out there. And if they do see another aircraft out there or somebody approaching the airspace, they'll stop their operations. But again, if it's easy for you to avoid that area, that's probably what you want to do. Okay. Other types of airspace areas that you're going to see here. several other types. And guys, I'm not holding you to all of these other special use airspaces or these other airspaces, but I want you to be aware of them. So you have local airport advisory areas, these military training routes where you'll see them in the sectional maps. Those routes are kind of like the military's highways, and they can be moving at a high rate of speed. TFRs, we are going to talk about temporary flight restrictions. Parachute jump operations, they do that in Glenwood. So we need to be, when we're out in the practice area, if we're over there kind of pushing over onto that west side of the practice area, in the summertime we need to be aware of those guys out there in parachutes. Published VFR routes, we call those Victor Airways. So those are Victor Airways. TERSAs, terminal radar service areas, national security areas, definitely want to know about those because that's a place where a lot of times you don't want to be. The Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ, you guys may have just heard recently about 2 F-22s that intercepted 2 Russian bombers in the ADIZ outside of Alaska with those. And then also you have defense VFR areas that you have. And then also there are intercept procedures, is that if you do find yourself intercepted by a military aircraft, you definitely want to comply with their instructions because in this day and age, these people are not playing. So if we look at these maps over here and we look, so we can see here, this is the Pine Hill East MOA. Here's the Camden Ridge MOA. Pine Hill West MOA. This is again more the Pine Hill East again through here. And you can see that you have civil airports in here. And so you can definitely work in these areas and you can definitely fly. That's not going to be a problem, but you need to know what these areas are and that these things are out there. So if you look here, here's an alert area. This is that alert thing that I was telling you about. You have the A here, and then also notice is that the alert area does not exist within the restricted area. So if you look right here, here is a restricted area there. And you can see here what's going on. High volume of rotary and fixed wing flight training. So that's one of the areas that they have this here. I'm trying to figure out where this is. Greenville. Trying to see if I see an airport that I don't know if that's like in Kentucky. Maybe Kentucky or Tennessee, maybe somewhere. I'm not real sure. Flight restricted zones near the Capitol and the White House. We have special awareness training here that has to happen in order for you to fly in or near Washington, D.C. And you have to have a certificate that you have completed that training. And it's kind of a serious deal. You have wildlife areas. You have NOAA areas there, tethered balloon observations. Some of you that remember flying around the Naval Air Station near Key West, is if you'll remember what happens there just northeast of the airport, is that there is an area there where they talk about they have these balloons up to, I think it's 3,000 feet or 5,000 feet, and on these cables, and those cables are pretty much invisible. Local airport advisory services here. This is going to be, again, information around an airport. A lot of that is going to be weather information that they give you. Military training routes. I'm not going to hold you to all of the rules and regulations about a military training route, but when you see them here, is that you can see what they look like on these charts. Now the IR stands for instrument routes, and you'll have a VR there for 037 if it's a VFR kind of a route. But those are their little highways in the skies. TFRs, temporary flight restrictions, those are going to be things like if you have firefighting, that's what we're going to see a lot of in the summer, and you'll see these red dots that are kind of show up out there around some of the forest fires out in the west. If the president or the vice president is moving around, they will have TFRs around those areas. We will have TFRs around Aspen occasionally, because we do have in the summertime as well, we'll have dignitaries that'll be coming in for Idea Fest and some of the other things that happen at the Aspen Institute. So we'll have times that we need to be aware of what's going on. ForeFlight tells us that, but then again in a flight briefing they tell us as well. There aren't that many pop-up TFRs, but if there are, ATC will come on and tell you to say, by the way, we have a new TFR in this area here as well. It is not in your route of flight, so you don't have to worry about it. If it was, they would tell you. They're also they'll have TFRs that'll pop up over major sporting events as they happen, or races. Anytime that you have a large congregation of people somewhere, they're going to have a TFR there just so that some knucklehead doesn't fly in there with an airplane and hurt a bunch of people. You'll look at that. I haven't seen a TFR pop up in Hawaii yet. They're on the Big Island, but I would not be surprised to look at that and see if there's a TFR up there as well. Parachute jump operations, we talked about that. Published VFR routes, we talked about that. The terminal radar service areas, or the TERSs, those are going to be areas there where you can get radar services near a larger airport. And you'll know where they are. These primary airports in and around Class Delta, Charlie, and Bravo airspace certainly will be in those areas where you can get radar services, even if you are a VFR pilot there as well. National security areas, those are going to be something there as well that you definitely want to make sure that you know, because those could be prohibited. And those could pop up at some point, and you always want to check the NOTAMs. You always want to check when you file your flight plan, that those things, that you get information on those, as well as like ATC letting you know if that should pop up. Air traffic control in the national airspace. When you look at that, I mean, we've talked about air traffic control. You guys kind of know what those are. But air traffic controller, they're the ones that kind of guide you, allow for separation if you're on an IFR flight plan, or allow you flight following if under VFR conditions, if their workload permits. They can give you information to help keep you safe and help you when they can with better, more efficient routing if that's possible. So there is that. Basic VFR weather minimums. This is the next thing I want to show you. We talked about basic VFR weather minimums. Now, you can look at this and you can learn the VFR weather minimums on this big table. Okay? This is something that we are going to learn. We are going to learn the VFR weather minimums. However, I'm going to show you a different way to learn it. Let me find it here. Is this it? Oh, that's just the basic. Here, hang on here. Here we go. This is the one I was looking for. All right. Now, can I write on this? No. Okay, here we go. So, here's what I want you to do. I want you to draw this triangle. Draw this triangle. So basically what you have a big triangle, and then you have an upside down triangle on the lower half of that triangle. So take some time right now and draw that triangle. Okay? Got a clean sheet of paper. Make it big, because you're going to be writing in there. You'll notice that I've used a big piece of paper right here. You're going to be writing stuff inside this. you need to know the VFR weather minimums, because in order for you to operate in these different airspaces, there are different minimums required. So you got to know what they are in order for you to fly through it. We are going to learn these. Okay, you got that drawn? Now after you've got that drawn, now we're going to talk about this. So here is the dealio, yo, yo. So what I want you to do is I'm going to leave this illustration on here, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes to draw exactly what you have, exactly what you see right there, okay? So take 5 minutes, and I want you to draw exactly what you're seeing on the screen right now. I will come back. Mrs. Benton, if you'd pause this and give them 5 minutes to draw this, then I will come back here and walk them through it. Okay, you can pause it now. All right, so now that you've paused this, we're going to talk about this here right now. So this line right here, in this, above this, you have 10,001 feet plus. Below this line is everything below 10,000 feet MSL. Okay? So that's what that 10,000 MSL piece means right there. This part here is that above 10,000 feet MSL in Class Echo or Gulf airspace, you must have 5 statute miles visibility, 5 statute mile visibility, and you must stay no closer than 1,000 feet below, 1,000 feet above, and 1 mile horizontal of clouds. 5 statute miles visibility, 1,000 feet below, 1,000 feet above, and 1 mile horizontal of clouds. Okay? That is in Class Echo and Gulf airspace above 10,000 feet MSL. Now, directly below that, below 10,000 feet MSL, it's a little different. So below 10,000 feet MSL, in Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo airspace, B, C, D, and E, your VFR weather minimums are 3 statute miles visibility, and you should get no closer to a cloud than 500 feet below, 1,000 feet above, and 2,000 feet horizontal to a cloud. Now you'll see that this cloud right here is shared between the Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo airspace and Gulf during the day. So Gulf over here on this side is day. This side of Gulf is night. Ergo the moon and the stars, okay? So this Gulf on the right side is day. And if you want to draw a sun over here, we could do a sun. You know, we could have, use a yellow marker over there if you're going to use that with the sun. Okay, it's up to you. If you want to get creative, go ahead. So with this one, in Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo airspace, 3 statute miles visibility and 521. 500 feet below, 2,000 feet horizontal, and 1,000 feet above clouds. That is in Bravo Charlie Delta Echo airspace below 10,000 feet MSL. Okay? So that takes care of all of the controlled airspace. But wait, we have uncontrolled airspace, right? That's that class golf stuff that I was talking to you about. I don't know why I can't erase these. I'm tapping the heck out of that screen. So now, during the night in class golf airspace, at night, golf reverts back to the VFR weather minimums for Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo airspace, meaning 3 statute miles visibility and 521. 500 feet below, 2,000 feet horizontal, 1,000 feet above the clouds. That is in class golf at night. During the day in class golf, that looks like a bear paw. That's not really a good sun. During the day, you don't need as much visibility in class golf airspace. It goes down to 1 statute mile visibility and 521. So you have 1 statute mile of visibility and stay away from clouds by 500 feet below, 2,000 feet horizontal, and 1,000 feet above. They share this cloud just to make the drawing easier. Okay? So class golf in the day, 1 statute mile visibility and 521. 500 feet below, 2,000 feet horizontal, 1,000 feet above. Okay? Then, during the day, if you are below 1,200 feet AGL on class golf, your visibility goes down to 1 statute mile visibility and clear of clouds, COC. That stands for clear of clouds. All right? So you can actually get closer to a cloud, but you cannot go into one. All right? Now notice this asterisk here on B. Now remember, I told you to draw this exactly the way that you saw it here on this chart. Well, there's an asterisk here on Bravo, okay? And that asterisk goes down to this. Class Bravo airspace requires you to remain clear of clouds. So you will have 3 statute miles of visibility in Class Bravo airspace and remain COC, clear of clouds. Okay? So that is Class Bravo airspace, 3 statute miles visibility, clear of clouds. Now here's a little tricky thing. What do you think the top of the Class Bravo airspace is in Denver? Well, it's 12,000 feet. So here's a case where you could operate in Class Bravo airspace above 10,000 feet MSL because of that restriction, because that Class Bravo ceiling goes higher in Denver. Okay? So, little odd thing. Then again, remember, we talk about Class Golf airspace as being below 10,000 feet MSL. Well, except in places like Colorado, where you're going to be 1,200 feet over the top of Mount Massive, and so that definitely puts you up there, you know, almost at 16,000 feet, if you can get there in a little airplane like that, okay? So there you go. There's also other types of communication things that you have flying in Class Golf airspace. Remember, in Class Golf airspace, it's uncontrolled. In Class Golf airspace, would it surprise you to know you don't even have to have a radio? Yeah. There are people out there flying little bug smashers right now in Class Golf airspace that they don't even have a radio. Now, let's think about this. How safe is that? Well, you know that in Class Golf airspace, you're going to have to be awfully low to the ground. You're doing some scud running. And guys, I know people do it, but here's the thing. Unless you're in an airplane like a Piper Cub or something that flies slow and you can land almost anywhere, I really would not recommend much flight in Class Golf airspace. Let's say something happened to your engine. Remember that you can always exchange altitude for airspeed. Well, when you don't have any altitude, there's not going to be a lot of exchanging going on. You're going to be putting the plane on the ground somehow. So flying that low to the ground can be risky. If you don't have a compelling reason to do that type of flying, then please don't. Again, Piper Cub, that's one thing. You know, these little small airplanes like that, flying over some, you know, wheat field in Kansas on some kind of a deal like that in Class Golf airspace, God bless. But when you're going places and you're in these other airspaces, there are other requirements, and they're there for your safety. So keep that in mind with this airspace. Now, I'm going to ask you one other thing here, and this is about the end of the class. So I showed you the VFR weather minimums in this format. Now I'll take this off. So remember, you have that format or this format. Which is easier, this or this? I agree with you. I like this one. So, it's not that this isn't the same information, but this gives you, I think, a little bit better picture of what that looks like. Now then, let's go back and let's look here at the top of this, at this illustration here. As soon as this gets unfuzzy. So you can see the Class Alpha airspace up here. Well, red on red, that's kind of a thing. So you can see where Class Alpha airspace is. Blue, Class Echo. Okay, you can see where that is. Bravo, big. See all of these layers that you have here? And all of these different layers can be at various altitudes. This is actually a pretty simplified look at Class Bravo airspace. On the next video, I'm going to show you other types of airspace and how they look on maps and the information that we have in them. Okay? So there's Class Bravo. You can see that Class Charlie, it's just that one layer upside down cake, where again, you have this inner cylinder down to the ground, and then you have another shelf out around it. This one is normally a 5-mile radius. This one is normally a 10-mile radius. So with this, then we have Class Delta. Class Delta is just this one cylinder. Okay? Then you have Class Gulf. So when you look at Gulf, you can see where these can be. This can be a non-towered airport with an instrument approach. This can be a non-towered airport with no instrument approach. In some cases, you're going to see the ceiling of Class Gulf at 1,200 feet AGL. In some cases, the ceiling of Class Gulf is going to be 700 feet AGL. And in some places, you're not going to see Class Gulf if it's below Bravo, Charlie, or Delta airspace. You're just not going to see it. So this is, I think, after you look at the VFR weather minimums and you see what the difference is in visualization-wise there, I'm going to show you another illustration that kind of shows you the airspace thing, and I'll do that for the video next time. So, guys, those are the basics of airspace that I want you to know. We'll kind of cover the other couple of pieces that I want you to know in the next video, and then we'll have a little quiz on airspace, okay? So, read the chapter, understand the things that I showed you, because the quiz is going to include what airspaces there are, the information that I shared with you about these airspaces, as well as the VFR weather minimums. You're going to need to draw these, so learn how to do it. Okay? Guys, thanks very much. Appreciate your attention today, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, guys.